My friends, welcome back. In the previous video I mentioned that Russians deployed smokescreen on the Kerch Bridge or the Crimean Bridge, and then the comments, you guys said, why? Why the hell? Because Ukrainian missiles usually follow coordinates, so the smoke wouldn't do anything. Why do the Russians deploy it? And since I do read most of the comments, I want to actually go into it. I'll read you the comments. Jonathan says, why is the smoke screen effective? Most sophisticated ordnance is GPS guided. Smoke or no smoke, new bombs are effective. Maybe a war or 3 ago, smoke would be effective. Gasm says, I love how the Russians use smoke screens as if that will deter a missile strike on the bridge that we already have geological coordinates on. Are they primitive-minded? One more. Mental Man says, what's the purpose of the smoke screen? You can see the bridge on satellite. You know the coordinates already. Missiles don't have to be able to see. They go to the coordinates you put into them. Yes, my friends, I mostly agree on you, actually. Missiles like Storm Shadow and ATACMS do have coordinates, and smoke screen doesn't stop them at all. But smokescreen does have some kind of an effect. For example, Ukrainian maritime drones that rely mostly on human-guided boats that have explosives on them. They're not self-guided. Actually, a human operator watches the camera feed and guides that boat to the coordinates. Secondly is the drones, which are also human-guided. Yes, Ukraine also has GPS-guided drones that don't require a human operator, but most of them still do. And even with those two drone types, Ukrainian operators can still fly or swim through the smoke screen and find the bridge, but it's more complicated. Now, I agree with you, this smoke is primitive, but it has some minor effects. Ukrainian chief and commander of the armed forces has spoken out. He doesn't really speak much or make public appearances, but now he did. He wrote an entire essay, and I'm going to summarize it for you because it gives us a realistic view of the situation of Ukrainian armed forces. In that essay, he admits that the Ukrainian counteroffensive that started in the summer 2023 did not yield the results they were hoping for. We all know this, the Russians know this, the Ukrainians know this. Also, he admits that Ukraine doesn't have any major offensives planned this year, so that means 2 more months, November and December. But that they do have major offensives planned, major operations planned for next year, 2024. Here are the main 5 points from Zaluzhnyi's essay. How can Ukraine win fast and not make this war into a drawn-out war for decades, something that Russia wants it to be? 5 points from Zaluzhnyi. Ukraine needs to gain air superiority. That is connected directly to the West supplying Ukraine with F-16s, more choppers, and maybe other fighters also like Saab Gripen. Number 2, breach mine barriers in depths. That means that Ukrainian ability to demine the frontal areas or breach the mine barriers is directly connected to Western support, because Ukraine does not produce mine clearing vehicles at all. And even the Western NATO countries don't have many of them. Germany has sent some, the United States has sent some, but Ukraine needs a lot more. I would say the mine clearing vehicles are the most underrepresented vehicles from the NATO military aid, because none of the countries in NATO actually has an abundance of these. Number 3, increase effective counter-battery fire. What does this mean? Well, Ukrainian counter-battery fire is already incredibly effective, much more precise than the Russians, because they have Western artillery systems, and we have talked about it forever. More precise, more accurate, more range. But since Russia has so much dumb iron, and by that I mean the old Soviet artillery pieces that they have by tens of thousands, it still means Ukraine needs more artillery shells and more electronic warfare units and radars which help Ukraine to shoot back faster and more precise. Now, again, Ukrainians are not producing these systems themselves, so they solely rely on the West to provide them. Number 4 is connected to the last point, build up electronic warfare capabilities, which is not only connected to counter-battery fire, but also early warning for Russian bombers, early warning for Russian glide bombs, for example, or Russian Ka-52 Lemur missiles, or drone attacks, missile attacks, everything. The more time Ukrainian troops on the front get to the shelter or to hide in any way, the more lives will be spared, the bigger the Ukrainian offensive capability will be in the future. And number 5 connects to everything, create and train necessary reserves. This means Ukraine is preparing for the long war although they are hoping for a short one. This is quite the opposite of what Russia is doing by throwing meat into the meat grinder. Zaluzhnyi stresses training the reserves. There is no point in wasting your manpower potential. You gotta train them first and then they can do what they're intended for. And now I'll read you a very short analysis by a Twitter account, Tendar, about Zaluzhnyi's essay. The most important thing, in my opinion, is his recommendation of extending Ukraine's indigenous military industry. What is thus known is that Ukraine has considerably changed the way how to produce weapon-grade products since February 2022. Before, Ukraine's industrial military complex resembled more of what we saw in the Soviet Union. It was made up primarily by state-owned, very inefficient and corrupt entities. This has changed considerably. Since the open war, a huge amount of startups have been created and they deliver a very efficient stream of innovative products, especially when it comes to the drone industry. This is what I wanted to get to, because the drones that we actually are buying with the funds you donated for the last fundraiser, 30 kamikaze drones, they're also from a military startup, and these drones are used daily in Ukraine on the front lines. They're being used right now, and about half of the drone videos you see, kamikaze drone videos, are with these very same drones. Before we go on, my friends, I wanted to give you something human connected to this war. I'm trying to keep this war as human as possible because I know war makes people apathetic. Apathy is growing. People see death and they don't react to it. So, to give you your humanness back, and me also, let's watch this soldier returning from the front, being rotated home, and his daughter is waiting for him, is so excited. Father is coming home. And what does he bring? Flowers and a puppy. Woohoo! You're small, 5 years old, your father, you haven't seen him for months, and suddenly you get a puppy and you get your dad back. This girl is happy, I can tell it. I feel human already, but now we're going to look at Russian losses, and they are very high today. 930 KIAs, that's almost 1,000 in one day. Again, during the past week and a half, one of the highest losses of the day actually. 18 tanks, 43 armored personnel vehicles and 42 artillery systems. Yes, the Russians did push in Kupiansk area and in the Avdiivka area. Both areas they pushed with armored vehicles. I saw the drone footages. Nothing new about it, my friends. The vehicles were approaching on open fields, straight onto Ukrainian minefields that were not even buried. They were visible on the ground. Russians just drove straight onto them. The first vehicle exploded, and then Ukrainian artillery missions finished up the job. 4 MLRS, 3 anti-aircraft warfare systems. 3! That is high. Usually it's 1 or 0. 33 vehicles and fuel tanks and 13 special equipment. Now, my friends, we go to the Kherson area over the Dnipro River, and I'll zoom into the settlement of Krynky. In this settlement, there is confirmed video footage of Ukrainian troop presence. Not the whole settlement has been liberated, but a huge chunk of it has been. Russians don't like it. Even the Russian commander of the Kherson front was sacked, and he was replaced by General Teplinsky, who was sent here to get things in order, because Ukrainians are slowly liberating areas over the Dnipro. Well, I'm not just talking. Look at this video. This is drone footage confirmed. These are Ukrainian troops, and this is the settlement of Krynky. We see a whole 1.5 squads here running. They have physical presence in Krynky. Actually, it's almost 2 squads here. And I will look at geolocation also later. This is all geolocated. So that's the drone footage, and based on these details, a Twitter account has geolocated this area to the satellite footage, which is in Krynky, in one of these industrial areas. But I mean, Krynky is on Russian-occupied side of the Dnipro River. How do the Ukrainians get across this huge water body here? Well, my friends, here's the answer. You see, they have these crazy camouflaged boats, and if you would see this boat docked up next to some trees, next to a river, you wouldn't even know it's a boat. It's so well camouflaged. With these, they are moving troops and equipment across. With these, I'm sure these soldiers in Krynky also got across. The situation for the Russians in the Dnipro area is very complicated because they have not been able to push Ukrainians back. Ukrainians have only minor forces transported across the Dnipro, and yet Russians haven't been able to push them back. This means if Ukrainians would send more troops here, that would be a very big issue for the Russians. Russians are already sending reserves here and sacking generals, as we know. My friends, are you ready for some Putin doubles? Everybody has been talking about it, but now we have a Japanese study actually confirming it using AI. I'll read you the analysis outcome. Japanese researchers have claimed 2 Putin doubles. Japanese experts in facial recognition and voice identification have concluded that the theory of Vladimir Putin's doubles who replace him at public events is gaining popularity. This information was published by the British tabloid The Sun. By analyzing Putin's various speeches with the use of modern artificial intelligence technology, Japanese experts have concluded that the Russian president probably has at least 2 doubles. One of the doubles was identified as the real Putin, who attended the Red Square parade in May 2023. After comparing the facial features of this Putin with the one who drove across the Crimean Bridge in Mercedes car in December 2022. The Japanese experts found only 53% similarity. A totally different person. An even smaller resemblance, just 40%, was found between the parade Putin and the president who visited Mariupol in March of 2023. Videos on state television show this Putin driving through the ruined city, touring the construction site of an apartment complex, talking to residents, and visiting what was said to be a 3-room apartment while giving instructions to the deputy minister Marat Kushnuilin. Now yeah, Putin would not, real Putin would not visit Mariupol in the winter of 2022 ever, never, not in a million years. But this Putin, I remember covering this video, he was in the crowd, smiling, talking to everybody, going into apartments, a real people's guy. Didn't look like Putin at all. The similarity between Putin's facial features in Mariupol and Putin on the Crimean Bridge was only 18%, according to the Japanese researchers. The artificial intelligence-based analysis clearly identifies the likelihood of at least 2 Putin doubles. Everybody suspected it, now we have research confirming it. This is how we get these videos from the Kremlin of Putin isolating himself and putting everybody on a very long table away from him. You know, paranoid Putin. And then suddenly, bam, we get a video of Putin being in Mariupol, surrounded by people in a war zone, being like all homely and feeling safe. Not the same people, not the same mindset. Where's the paranoia suddenly? Now we have it. Body doubles. My friends, the South Korean intelligence has made a report. According to the report, North Korea has supplied 1 million artillery shells into Russia physically. Russia is in huge lack of artillery munitions, and North Korea has a huge stockpile of Soviet munitions which Russia can fire from their dumb iron howitzers, and they have sent over 1 million. We have a Twitter account, Tatarigami, whose team has done a thorough research. I'm gonna read you the thread so we all know what's up. After extensive research and analysis of North Korean deliveries to Russia using various sources and calculations, we estimate that Russia has received around 2,000 cargo containers containing over 500,000 artillery shells. Tatarigami's team concluded 500,000, which is very conservative. This estimate, which leans towards the conservative side, suggests that the actual number likely surpasses 500,000 shells. These artillery shells encompass predominantly both 152 and 122 calibers, 2 of the most used calibers in the war. We measured containers, identified types, gathered data on the crates, and used basic mathematical calculations to arrive at what we think is a reliable estimate. To validate our findings, we applied different approaches to calculations and arrived at nearly identical numbers. So this means this 500,000 has been arrived to many different analysis ways, and still the number is the same, leading me to believe that yes, this conservative 500,000 might even be too small of a number. We decided to explore multiple scenarios because we lack precise data on the distribution of delivered ammunition, resulting in our report containing 4 variants. Nevertheless, it's highly likely that at least 50% of the total deliveries consist of 152mm ammunition. And as you can see, Russians are storing these ammunition containers. These are whole shipping containers filled with ammunition. They have finally learned and started to store them separately from each other, because the whole of 2022 consisted of videos of Ukrainians blowing up an insane amount of Russian ammunition. Well, here it's quite difficult to blow it up actually, because it wouldn't ignite the box next to it because it's surrounded by dirt walls. This is almost the proper way to store it, actually. I hate that the Russians are learning. The White House confirmed 1,000 container shipments from September to October. October 27th, satellite images show a cargo ship at Rehi port. This provides continuous shipments extending almost a month beyond the White House's announcement of 1,000 containers in early October. The substantial ammunition supply is a concern for Ukraine, given the war's reliance on artillery. Though there were occasional shortages and decreased artillery fire, Russian forces particularly retained their ammunition stocks, now augmented by North Korean deliveries. If truly North Korea has supplied 1 million shells, then this is enough for Russia for a few months at least of very heavy usage of artillery, which is very bad news for Ukraine because every extra shell fired from the Russian side translates quite directly to KIAs on Ukrainian side. That's how it is. So this means the West now needs to step up and provide Ukraine with more artillery shells. My friends, we need some humor also because a lot of serious analysis has been done. Get ready for this. Here is bitter Putin, salty, spicy Putin, talking about the effect of the sanctions on the Russian economy. I'll read you the subtitles. In their fantasies, they just get absurd. You know that too. Esteemed colleagues, they suggest banning import of screwdrivers, needles, etc. to Russia. But the less crap, the better, probably. Less chance that bed bugs will be exported to us from the large European cities. Putin doesn't want the bed bugs from European cities. What about the Russian exports? Kopniks, for example, vodka, alcoholism, drugs. No, but the bed bugs. Putin is glad about the sanctions because at least they don't get the bed bugs. Of course, Russian economy is stagnating, the inflation is high, but at least no bed bugs. Now we jump into the Middle East, my friends. This is the G sector, and on the blue you can see the IDF ground forces moving. This is yesterday's report. That means that this 1 kilometer strip that the IDF has not yet been covered is covered by today, and I can report that the IDF ground forces have cut the G sector in half, isolating the most populous part, the north. This area right here, which most of the population lives, also most of the H fighters. Now this cutting in half also isolates them logistically, cutting the tunnels that give them ammunition and weaponry from Egypt. That's the goal of the IDF. IDF reported that the fighting is now on heavily urbanized areas, meaning casualties are higher on both sides. We're talking about deadly urban warfare where the defenders have always an edge over armored vehicles, for example, which are easy to destroy, coming out of a building, shooting, running back into the building, armor destroyed, but your own casualties avoided. And the IDF is the attacking side here, meaning they will take heavy casualties. Another news, Egypt has reopened the border to the G sector, not fully, but to get the wounded out and to get the logistics and humanitarian aid in. Most of the weapons and ammunition are smuggled into the G sector through the tunnels from Egyptian side. Over this border you see on the screen right now, the tunnels are underneath, and IDF's air force is bombarding these tunnels from above to make them collapse, or using these very special developed foam bombs that they bombard to the entrances of the tunnel that explode the foam, and the foam hardens, and then you suddenly cannot use the tunnel anymore. IDF is very creative on fighting these tunnels. Now, my friends, my favorite part of the video, the reading of the Patreon names. These are the people who are true fans of my channel, and they have been supporting, some of them at least, for years. And I want to butcher your names. Ron Hunter, Jochni Andola, Juhan Alexander Rudi Koit Lestal Holland. You gotta be Estonian or with Estonian roots or something, because these could be Juhan, definitely an Estonian name. Aitäh. Carlotte Lambert, James Oprisko. Thank you to these people for supporting the channel. And if you like what I do and you want to support, head on to the Patreon. Any amount is significant. Also, my friends, I guide you to my Instagram account because there I want to post stories of me working out, and if nobody's watching, it's sad for me. Honest opinion from me to you right now. Go and check these out. I'll see you in my Instagram, and until my next video, which will be tomorrow, Slava Ukraini, and bye bye.